Hello and welcome. I am DEJI360. Now, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria has again hiked benchmark interest rate by 200 basis points as Africa's largest economy looks to recover from a historic currency crisis and soaring inflation. Now, the MPC jacked up the rate to 24.75 now percent from 22.75% in its second consecutive hike after February's 400 basis point increase. While cash reserve ratio for deposit money banks was left at 45%, that of merchant banks was raised from 10% to 14%. Liquidity ratio was left at 30%. Governor Olayemi Cardoso told a press conference after the MPC meeting that the committee came to the conclusion that continued tightening in order to tame runaway inflation now is still the way to go. Take a listen to his explanation.
The considerations of the committee at this meeting focused on the current inflationary pressures and the need to anchor inflation expectations as well as ensure sustained exchange rate stability. These considerations underscore the importance of the CBN's commitment to the price stability mandate and the need to urgently bring inflation under control to ensure that purchasing power of ordinary Nigerians is restored in the short to medium term. Members noted the continued rise in headline inflation, driven largely by food prices because of supply shortages and high costs of logistics and distribution. The committee, therefore, was of the view that addressing food insecurity is key to containing current inflationary pressures. On this note, members commended the ongoing efforts of the federal government towards addressing food insecurity. Some of these measures include the provision of various palliatives, release of grains from the strategic reserves, distribution of seeds and fertilizers, as well as farm implements for dry season farming.
Now, the latest hike in benchmark interest rate will certainly not go down well with the business community in the country, especially manufacturers who kicked against the last round of interest rate hike, saying it would make access to credit difficult and impede economic growth. But Cardoso, allaying fears of a continuous rate hike, has assured that the current spate of monetary policy tightening measures by the CBN would not be long drawn and would be relaxed once there were substantial improvements in the economy in terms of inflation and exchange rate. Now, hear him again.
We are not unmindful of the impact that these increases in interest rates are having. We are not unmindful of it. We are very, very, very mindful. And in actual fact, if you look at it, why are we doing this? Because we've said our main objective is to manage inflation. And we believe that with increased interest rates, we have a situation where the foreign exchange market becomes a lot more lively. We've had relative shortages in foreign exchange over the recent past. We're now seeing more activity in the foreign exchange market, which in turn is reducing the exchange rate and is also reducing costs. Okay, so it's not a one-sided affair that the increase in interest rates is strangulating the economy. While it may have those tendencies on one side, with the foreign exchange rate coming down, that also helps to moderate the overall. And as I had said earlier, we would expect that this would not be too long drawn. At least I would hope so, that it would not be too long drawn. We are getting towards a situation where on the exchange rate, it is moderating, and we expect it to continue to moderate. And then it finds a level which, quite frankly, very, very important, is sustainable That's very, very, very important. A level that is sustainable, which obviously will involve huge huge collaboration with the fiscal side, because a lot of that cannot just rely on the monetary side alone. So whatever we see on the interest rate side, which is being used to help to moderate prices, buys us time to ensure that the fiscal side, is able to do all the things that it is already doing and ensures for a more sustainable economy, where the need to depend too much on hiking interest rates is considerably reduced.
Let's try to unpack all of this now with economist Dr. Muda Yusuf, who is also the chief executive of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Doc, thank you very much for coming on the program. Listening to the CBN governor there, one tends to get the impression that, look, there's just no other way than to continue to tighten, especially with inflation at above 30%. And then you have this big elephant in the room, the volatility in the exchange rate, the exchange rate crisis. What do you make of his explanation there?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I agree with his explanation to a large extent. But again, just as he said, there is need for a careful and strategic balancing act between the desire to moderate inflation using monetary policy tools and the desire to also achieve growth objectives, and to also ensure that those who are investors, particularly those who are indebted to the banks, are not strangulated in the process. So our concern is that of ensuring that balance. For now, there seems to be a disproportionate emphasis on monetary policy tools to achieve the objective of taming inflation. And just as he has also agreed, there are many drivers to inflation. Quite a lot of issues coming from the cost side. Foreign exchange, of course, is an issue. Cost of logistics, cost of diesel, cost of power, insecurity, and so on. These are factors that monetary policy instruments may not be able to readily tackle, which is why I agree with his position that it is very important that we urgently also bring on board the fiscal authorities. But in all of this, we need to determine the limits at which we go in terms of tightening and the pace at which we are going in terms of tightening. I say this because for investors that are already owing the banks, now many of them will have to be interest rates at about 25, 28. For SMEs, you'll be talking about even over 30%. For those who intend to take facility from the bank, that is completely out of it. Because no sane person, you approach the bank at this time to take a facility at about 30%. To do what? How are you going to pay it back? So that is the major concern. So that is why I think we need to have some moderation in the degree and the pace of the tightening of monetary policy.
And let me just ask you this. How do you expect manufacturers to cope at this time? Because before now, manufacturers had actually been complaining, they'd been complaining about the difficult business environment. The last time we saw the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria report saying that over 700 manufacturing outfits have actually shut down in the last 1 year. And I remember when the central bank, the MPC now increased rate the last time by 400 basis points. This manufacturer shouted themselves hoarse. And now we have 200 basis point increase. And there's still no certainty that this is the end of the road. We might still see another tightening. We might still see further tightening now down the road. At least the CBN governor gave that indication. I'm just wondering how should manufacturers deal with this?
Well, Obviously, it's a very difficult time for manufacturers. And not only manufacturers, practically all investors that are interfacing with the credit market, with the financial markets. It's an extremely difficult time. Because when you take this issue of interest costs, you take the issue of energy costs, which the monetary policy instrument is not likely to bring down immediately. You take the issue of the logistics, you take the issue of the import duty payment, which again has a lot to do with some of the CBN policies. And you also, on top of that, take into account the fact that the purchasing power is getting weaker by the day. So there's a whole lot of headwinds against manufacturers and other investors. Take a typical example of even maybe the hospitality industry, the hotels, for instance, or supermarkets, or even broadcasting, where you have to run the business 24/7. Most times, 80%, 70% of the time, you are running on diesel. Diesel is now 1,500, 1,400. How many businesses can survive that? So if you have recourse to now fall back to say, okay, you want to take credit, how are you going to pick that back? And if you are not taking credit, what other source of financing do you have? Do you have the savings? Where is the savings? Do you have equity investors you can bring into the business? So it's a quandary for many investors. But again, I see the point that the CBN governor was making. And he emphasized the point that he was also aware of the impact of this on the real sector of the economy and other investors in the economy. But perhaps this is a price we need to pay in the short term. But in doing that, because it's only a business that is alive that can come back to reap the benefits of whatever you are trying to do. So we need to ensure that these businesses remain alive. So that is why I think that we need to moderate this. Take the critical sectors, for instance, that create the jobs. You mentioned manufacturing, take agriculture, take construction, take real estate, take mining. How many of these sectors can survive with an interest rate that is close to 30% or even more? Even trading that people just look at as if you can just make quick money. Even as a trader, can you make a return of 30% on investment? So if you are not careful, we'll be decoupling or disconnecting the real economy from the banking system. That is what is happening. And this is also affecting financial intermediation. It's affecting the quality of loans, the capacity to pay back. Non-performing loans is also likely to continue to increase. People are likely to be losing their collaterals. So these are the challenges that some of us are worried about.
But if we do not...
I agree with him. There has to be some balance between this tightening and also bringing in the fiscal policy component of the policy.
So if we do not begin to see inflation moderate, what would you expect the CBN or the Monetary Policy Committee to do? Because, as we speak, inflation rate is still higher than the benchmark interest rate anyway. It's still far higher, over 30%. And we're looking at interest rate of just around 24.75%. So what then would you expect the bank to do?
Well, there's a limit to which we can continue to pursue the orthodoxy of monetary policy, in the sense in which some proponents are saying that you have to get interest rates to surpass inflation rates. We need to be very careful about that. The objective of all of this is to ensure we moderate liquidity. The CBN can look at other options of moderating liquidity apart from tightening interest rates. For instance, we have seen an improvement in the yield on treasury base, interest rates on treasury base increasing, and some other financial instruments. If you see an improvement in that, yes, a lot more people can begin to invest in that. And that's another way of moderating liquidity. Then, of course, we need to look at the fiscal side, because in the last couple of months, we have seen an increase in liquidity in the public sector as a result of the reforms and as a result of the impact of the reform on government revenue, which is a positive thing. But we also need to be careful not to allow the improvement in revenue to create a liquidity challenge, which is offsetting the macroeconomic environment. So we can see how we can also sterilize some of this revenue that is coming from government, so that these things are not feeding into the financial system or into the economy in a way that will be compelling the CBN to be now be tightening monetary policy, which invariably will be affecting those who are investors. Because those who are in the public sector, they are not borrowing money as such. Their revenue is increasing, they can spend it, so they are at liberty to spend it. So these are some of the concerns that I think we need to worry about.
How would you assess the measures now the bank, the CBN has taken in bringing some semblance of stability in the forex market? At least we can see that the naira has been gaining strength for a while now, and somehow that crazy volatility we had in the immediate past is no longer there. So what would be your assessment of the measures that the CBN has taken? Would you say these measures are actually responsible for the semblance of stability we're seeing at the moment? And where would you want to see, what more do you want to see?
No, I think we should commend the CBN on what has been achieved so far. Because the stability or the improvement, the appreciation of the exchange rate in the last 1 to 2 weeks is something that is commendable. And it's also an indication that the CBN is doing something right. So we must commend the CBN for that. But what I want to caution against is to ascribe this improvement exclusively to the tightening of monetary policy. Because if you look at what has happened in the last 1 month or so, there have been a rush of circulars, coming from the central bank.
Yes.
Targeting all the malpractices that are taking place in the foreign exchange market. Apart from these fundamental economic issues, there are also people issues. There are malpractices, there are all sorts of manipulations, there are all sorts of speculative activities which the CBN has been trying to deal with. And that is also giving us some results. Because some of those activities are also creating distortions in the system. All manner of flows, all manner of demands, all manner of pressures on the foreign exchange market. So it's a combination of factors that has brought us, or that has led to the positive outcome that we are seeing in the area of the exchange rate. So I think we can sustain that, but not to come with the mindset that everything here is about just tightening monetary policy. I think we need to decelerate the tightening of monetary policy and now see what you can do to scale up production, through some fiscal policy measures like, import duty, like the customs duty exchange rate, like tax reliefs, and things like that. I think those things can also do a lot in terms of reducing the cost of production. I think that is very important.
And speaking specifically now, the customs duty exchange rate, I mean, it's a big problem. We can't deny that it's also partly responsible for the inflation we have at the moment. You go to the importers are complaining that, look, the rate is too high, that the central bank uses what you call the black market rate now for estimating customs duties and all of that, and that import has actually come down as a result of this. What do you think needs to happen? Because there are those who have suggested that, look, maybe we should have a completely different rate for estimating customs duties now, something probably different and much lower than what you have in the official window, and even much lower than what you have in the parallel market.
Yes, I align myself with that position, because at a time like this, we also need to be thinking outside the box. We think out of the box. We cannot stick strictly to the orthodoxy of policies. We need to recognize the peculiarities of our environment and make the policies also reflect these peculiarities without necessarily upsetting the fundamental principles of the reforms that are ongoing. So I'm a believer in the fact that we need to have a special rate for the computation of import duty, which will be fixed possibly for the rest of the year. Because there are two issues about this customs duty exchange rate. There is the issue of the volatility and uncertainty that is creating in the international trade process. That is not good for international trade. It's not, we don't find that anywhere where the custom duty you pay is changing from week to week, from day to day, it doesn't happen. So because of the peculiarity of our environment, we should have a fixed exchange rate, maybe 1,000 naira to the dollar, maybe 900. That will help first to bring stability, second to reduce costs. And it is not going to upset the economic reforms in any way.
Wouldn't that, sorry to interject,
but is what I think.
Yes, sorry to interject, but wouldn't that be like going back to the regime we're trying to move away from? We're trying to achieve convergence of the rates now. Wouldn't that be like going back to that period when we had different rates for, different sectors and essentially not making sense, something that we're trying to correct?
No, this one is different. We have to distinguish between the foreign exchange market itself, where you buy and sell foreign exchange at a prevailing rate. We are talking about exchange rate for the computation of import duty. The whole idea of having a concessionary exchange rate for import duty is to bring down the cost of imports, the cost of production, the cost of raw materials, the cost of machineries, which the administration is trying to do. They are completely different things. This other option does not offset anything. It's a level playing field. And whatever you are importing, you import at an exchange rate of maybe 1,000 naira, maybe 900, exclusively for the computation of import duty. That does not apply to the foreign exchange market. So they are completely different things. And if you need to reduce the temperature now, as far as inflation is concerned, these are some of the measures that we need to take. And this will require, some kind of coordination, because I know the administration is very strong on coordination. This will require some coordination between fiscal and monetary, to think out of the box and do some extraordinary things to be able to deal with the crisis of the cost of living. It's extremely very important.
Just before I let you go, let me get your comments on this new capital requirements now for the banks in the country, deposit money banks, merchant banks, non-interest banks. What's your take? I mean, you must have heard, of course, it's something that you know. Are we likely, with the requirements now, are we likely to see some banks actually merge, or you think they'll be able to raise the new capital requirement? Say, for instance, for those with international authorization now, the capital requirement of 500 billion, you think they'll be able to meet that?
Well, even as we speak, there are banks, about 5 of them, that already have a capital base in excess of 1 trillion naira. So some banks have gone beyond even this new capitalization. And this capitalization is necessary in order to strengthen the capacity of the banks to be able to support their exposure. That is very important. And this is also related to financial system stability. So it is necessary, because the last time we had this major minimum capitalization requirement rule was in 2004, 2005, during the Soludo era. And at that time, for National Bank, I think it was 25 billion naira.
Yes.
25 billion naira at that time. It's about $190 million. $190 million today is about 250 billion naira. So when you look at the relativity of it, really nothing has changed in terms of the real value of the capitalization. So if you need to preserve that value, you need to make this adjustment. The only issue is that we are not making those adjustments as we are progressing. But it's something that we needed to do. So when you look at the value of the 25 billion at that time, or the value of 50 billion at that time, it's almost the same thing as 200 billion or 250 billion. I'm talking of the 25 billion today. So for me, I think it's in order, and some banks are already even above the 1 trillion threshold in terms of capital requirements. And the good thing about this new policy regime is that it's given 24 months.
Yes.
So there is enough time either to raise capital or to arrange a merger or to go for acquisition, whatever it is. So we are not faced with a stampede. People can take their time to do it. And I also need to caution that we also need to manage this information carefully so that we don't create problems for the smaller banks. All our financial soundness indicators show that all our banks are stable, they are sound, we don't have any problem with them. Because when you have this situation, people in the process of competition, they could begin to demarket their competitors. All our banks are safe, and I think the CBN needs to send this message out loud and clear that there should be no panic as far as the status of any banks are concerned.
One more question, Doug, before you go. At this time, many Nigerians, the majority of Nigerians actually want reassurance that, look, things are going to get better, that the economy is gradually moving on the right trajectory, and that it's just a matter of time, things will be better. Of course, that's the assurance that the government has been given for quite a while now. But as an economist, as someone who sits on the sidelines, to just watch, do you think Nigerians should be rest assured that with what you see, that things are going to get better?
Yes, I believe that things will get better. I believe there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we are beginning to see evidence of that anyway. The reforms have been very painful. It has been very difficult for us to absorb. Again, the reforms were inevitable reforms, but we are beginning to turn the corner. That is my sincere view. You can see now that the CBN is in a better position now to begin to intervene in the market, which is part of what is bringing about this moderation. The CBN said it has cleared all the backlogs. That is some relief. By the time we begin to reduce our importation of petroleum products, that will also bring some stability. The fiscal consolidation position in terms of fiscal revenue and all of that, that is also improving. We just hope and pray that the managers of our resources will manage those resources well. Because across all levels of government, there is much more revenue to be able to do something to cushion the effects of all these challenges. So I think that we are on the right path, but it's also important, and the president is already doing that, to ensure that we bring on board as many perspectives as possible. And we properly coordinate policies, and we take on board the perspectives of operators in the economy. Because we cannot leave the economy entirely to technocrats. We should be engaging those who are operators in the economy so that if there are loose ends in the policy process, we can tighten those loose ends.
Okay.
That will make us reckon with the realities of our economy. That is extremely very important.
Dr. Muda Yusuf, thank you so very much for your time. Thanks for coming on the show as always.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll take a short break now, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Don't go away. Opinions are free. Facts are sacred. But truth is universal. How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.